Great. Hello, everybody. I'm just waiting for everything to connect to Instagram because such is life with Instagram. it just, tends to kind of do its own thing most of the time.
Right.
So, all right. Oh, it actually connected pretty quick today. Yay. Hey, everybody. I am so happy for you to join us today. If you are hanging around, go ahead and give us a hello. I'm here with Nathan Hall, and he has a new book out, and we are going to talk about it. So, Nathan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So first, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm happy to be here. But yeah, my name is Nathan M. Hall. I'm the author of Path of the Moonlit Hedge, which is right here over my shoulder. There you go.
Sorry,
Um,
notes all over.
I'm an animist, witch, and I live in South Florida, and I spend a lot of time in the watershed, the Everglades here, wandering through swamps and on and off trails and getting into all kinds of mischief. So
I love that. So, you live really close to the Everglades?
I live. I don't know if it's technically it's the northern edge of the
Okay,
Everglades.
right.
So it flows into the Everglades. It's not actually part of the park, I guess, but
Okay.
the Everglades historically flowed from above Lake Okeechobee, which is in the center of the state,
Mhm.
um, and flowed down, created the lake, and then flowed down from there.
Oh,
So I'm in sort of the northeastern quadrant, sort of next to the lake, or a little bit east of the lake.
right.
Yeah,
Okay. Oh, cool. Yeah, I was there in the Everglades, like smack in the middle. I don't remember exactly where, but it definitely has an energy there. Like it's
yeah,
pretty intense for
yeah, yeah,
sure.
yeah. I love it. When I get to go to the actual park, it's a real treat for me. But even the portion that I have access to, I mean, literally I can drive. It's a 10 to 15 minute drive for me, and
That's
so
cool.
I visit multiple times a week, usually, unless there's a thunderstorm happening. So
Right. No, I love that. And I know you
yeah,
even wrote a little bit about, a really interesting experience you had there in your
yeah,
book as well, right?
yeah. So that was one of the really sort of key, I guess, key events in my connection with the spirit of Florida. I had been one of my friends was doing an art residency with the actual park,
Okay.
and they host artists in residence, and for like 3 month stints, and let them just like live there, experience the Everglades, and produce art from
Cool.
their experience. It's really a very cool program. I
Yeah.
wish I was more of an artist because I would totally apply for it.
I just be a
Um,
bunch of stick figures, but
yeah, right.
just about as
uh,
far as my art goes.
yeah. I mean, I tried to like play, like writing is an art. It is an art form,
It's
but
true.
they want visual arts or, more along the lines of traditional art, I think.
Mhm.
But anyways, she invited my wife and I to stay there with her and just experience it for a weekend. She had lined up some little adventures here and there, and yeah, I got to go out into the middle of the Everglades. We got up sort of as the or we started driving as the sun was rising
Mhm.
towards our destination, and we stopped at a waypoint where you can kind of like it's an elevated overlook of the park in a way.
Okay.
So I was there. It was the sun is rising, and in the distance, I'm seeing like a little murmuration of birds like flying. Um, I don't know if they were actual swallows or whatever, but they were doing that sort of murmuration. You know what I'm talking about?
Just
Where
like they're like going around like
yeah,
that.
the
Yeah.
interesting shapes that they create as they, are sort of flying around. Um, and I had this like, okay, okay, Everglades, I'm here. I want to connect with you. Like, let me, show me who you are, or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And
What do you
and
got?
and when I put that energy out there, uh, that that murmuration just kind of like exploded, and
Ooh.
like I had this sensation of this like almost like a direct like line, like a laser or something of energy just like hit me, and I was like immediately overcome and realized that I had essentially provoked the spirit of this entire ecosystem, uh, challenged it to show itself to me,
You
and
asked.
I had done it completely without no shielding, no
Right.
like please do it for my as gently as possible because I am so much smaller than you. None of that, and I didn't I
Nope.
was just
Here we
like,
go.
here we go, and it really strongly impacted me. It was probably the most one of the most powerful spirit experiences that I've ever had.
Wow.
It was overwhelming. It overwhelmed my senses, and I was immediately sick from
Yeah.
it. I it was and not in like it was trying to be doing something negative to me. It was just like the amount of power that I that it was
Yeah, just like
shown
I
to me.
get nauseous if it's too much. Like that's how
Yeah,
I get like really
yeah,
nauseous. So I totally
yeah,
know what
yeah.
you're
When you become like really ungrounded,
saying.
you get the spins, all of that stuff, and I ended up vomiting from the experience a couple times, and that's not me normally. So it was I was very shaken by the experience, and also very humbled because
Right.
I was just like, well, you know what? I'm a witch and I can handle this stuff, and no.
Fine, I get it. Whatever, I can take it. And then
Right, right.
now nature's like, all right,
All right,
challenge
here you go. So after that, I had another a continuation, after that experience. Later in that morning, we actually went to a what's called a cypress mound,
Mhm.
where so all of the Everglades, the entire state of Florida is kind of on limestone,
Right.
and there are limestone depressions that sort of fill up with water, fill up with vegetation, rotting vegetation, um, and cypress trees will like get planted in this muck and
Mhm.
then grow up, and they grow into this. So in the center, it's the deepest, and there's the most access to consistent water. So the trees in the center will grow the tallest, and
Oh,
then as it goes towards the edges, they grow smaller and smaller and smaller,
okay.
and it creates this like a dome shape on the horizon that you can see.
Oh, I didn't
Um,
see that now. I'm gonna have to
yeah,
Google
yeah, it's very
it.
cool.
I love citrus trees too, and I
Yeah,
hadn't seen that. Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, yeah. I love there's so much magic with cypress trees.
Oh, absolutely.
The cypress knees that pop up so that they can get more oxygen, um, that are just like extensions of their roots. They're so cool, and I have so many like spirit experiences with them. Like I, to me, there's like a connection to almost like gnome
Oh,
creatures, like
I was just
gnome
gonna say
spirits.
that. Absolutely,
Yeah,
100%. Yeah, I lived in
yeah,
Savannah for a little while, so I did know,
nice.
we had some, and that, oh my gosh, yeah, they
Yeah,
definitely are super magical.
yeah, yeah. So, and there's so many just different uh, stories I've had with them. But anyways, the so we went to the Cypress Dome, and we could walk through the river of grass because it was dry season,
Okay.
so we didn't really get stuck in the muck, but there were some places where we had to pull them out. It was like the classic quicksand
Jeez.
experience.
Yeah. Wow.
the kind in the movies, and you're like, that's not real, and it's really not real. But when you get like kind of stuck like thigh deep in mud, it's really hard to get out of it
Making
without
me
help.
think of like never ending story, like Atreus
Yeah,
around the
exactly.
corner over here.
So there was a group of us that were walking to this cypress dome, and we were walking there because the person who was taking us said, well, yesterday there was a 12-foot alligator that we spotted, and we want to go show you. So so we walked out there, and sure enough, the alligator was there, but it's the kind of thing. I mean, you give it plenty of space. You don't want to bother it, disturb it, anything.
I would think that, most people wouldn't, but there are
Yeah,
those people.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
So, but it was like once you go inside of a cypress dome, it's a really magical place. It's almost like a portal to another world in some ways.
Right
There's
now.
there's all of these like bromeliads of all different colors. Bromeliads are like air plants that grow in cypress trees, if in case people don't know. Um, and there's all the like there's some Spanish moss, some different types of moss that dangle down from the trees, and bromeliads shoot out these really beautiful flowers that are come in like reds and yellows, and sometimes even like almost bluish. Um, so we're inside of this dome, which is just it's like a mini forest,
Hmm.
and the sky is filtering through, almost looking like stars coming through the branches, and then you've got all of these like pops of color just everywhere hanging in the trees,
Yeah.
and it was a really like I mean, and it's like 10 degrees cooler inside the cypress dome than it
Right.
is.
Just
And
from like the moisture, probably,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and and it was dry everywhere else, but inside the cypress dome, lots of water was still collected.
Hmm.
And animals tend to kind of hang out in cypress domes in the dry season because of access to water and
Yeah.
food and things like that. So, but yeah, that was sort of my initiatory experience, if you will, into what it could mean to work with the spirits that are existing in Florida. I'm not originally from Florida. I've been here for 18 years, but
Hmm.
I was a transplant, and so having that sort of experience, like I said, was a very initiatory type of thing.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, and I think that's really kind of an important point too. Like when you move somewhere else, and I know you talk about it, connecting with the land,
Yeah.
when you go somewhere else. So with our house in Massachusetts, it's, like I said, it's 300-year-old house, and native, there's a lot of Native American history there. There's just so much. And there's actually a stone on my property that's worn out, and they said that's like from when they would do the corn and stuff
Oh
like that.
wow.
So
Oh, that's
that,
incredible.
yeah, it's so cool, and just touching it, you're just like, all right. So I
Yeah.
have just been kind of going around and just leaving little things for everybody
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So trying, and just really getting to know all the plants and stuff, which is really
Yeah.
a cool thing. And I know, so I thought that was really cool too that you talk about that in your book as well. And I'm
Yeah.
like, because I think it's so important, and it helps you. Yeah, I think it helps too, even when you're grounding, and that you're connected to the land. That it's
Yeah.
just like almost more efficient grounding in a way. I mean,
Yeah,
you're
for sure.
ground regardless, but when you're connected, it almost knows you and knows what you need.
Yeah,
Right.
and if you've developed, in my animist sort of way of practicing, like if you've developed relationships with so many of the plant spirits and animals and stones and all kinds of things around you, there is a sense, and you've created a partnerships with them. There is a sense of being at home. Even when you're in a stressful place, or having you can it's like it's almost like a familial feeling to have those spirits available, and there to help you through your situation. It's
Right, right. And it is, and I think that's something that people don't realize too, that there's all this help outside and around you that
yeah,
is available to you if you just take the time to kind of show them that respect and let them know that, yeah, I want to
yeah,
work with you. My house in
yeah,
New York, where I'm now, I live on top of a mountain,
yeah.
in the Adirondacks, and
Nice.
this there's so much like the Fae around here.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, all over the place. And it made me think, because I was reading too, and I know you were talking about gnomes, and we talked about it a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit, but you're talking about it in your book as well. And um, so a funny story, my son, there's a reservoir that's like kind of on the other side of the mountain, and my youngest son goes there, and he is so intuitive, like he doesn't realize it. He's only 17, but he
yeah.
picks up on everything, and he's very, very connected to the land. So he goes to this reservoir by himself every day, and
Oh, that's incredible.
he swims naked in the reservoir. Like he's like, that's the only way to do it.
Yeah,
And he's
yeah,
around there. So, and he would go camp there with his friends, and he's gone there a lot by himself. But so gosh, it was probably like a month or two ago, he said he was there with some friends at night, and he's like, they kept hearing knocking like on the
oh, yeah,
trees.
yeah.
And I was like, oh boy, okay. I said, tell him. I said, all right, right, all right. And then he's like, so we were kind of yelling, and we were telling him, who is it? They thought it was like some other kids messing with them. I'm like, oh, no, 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 no,
Yeah,
no. Because there's the gnome around here. Oh,
yeah,
they are feisty.
yeah.
So, and as he was going along, he's like, his friend mentioned it. He's like, Mom, I know, and they know what I do. They, you know, I've shared everything I have 4 boys. So
Yeah,
I've always done everything with them, so they
yeah.
kind of know. And he's like, well, I know this might sound weird, but I kind of think there's gnomes in the woods. I'm like, oh boy, there's so many gnome and all sorts of things in the woods. So
Right,
he's like, well, I'm kind of scared, I'm like, no, don't be scared. I said, just talk to them. I said, leave them maybe some, little cake or some food or whatever. So
right.
him and his friends are doing this. It's amazing
That's
that,
great. That's
I
incredible.
yeah, I live in it's pretty conservative. Like I'm kind of like the town weirdo, And so I love the fact that the friends are involved in this. Like that just
Yeah.
makes me so happy. So they did. And so he was there the other night by himself, and he's like, he heard like a kid voice.
Mhm.
And I said, I think they want to connect with you. I said, talk back to them, and you left them stuff or whatever. So it's been really cool
That's awesome.
to, kind of teaching him how to get that. And then he's just so open and so connected to the land. So that was really cool.
That's
And
awesome. Yeah, what an
yeah,
incredible story.
yeah. And I thought that was really neat. So I'm actually, now that I finished your book too, I was going to give it, I give him books all the time. So I'm going to give
Yeah,
him a book to read, because
awesome. I
I
love it.
think, it'd be, yeah, I think it'd be really something that would be awesome for him. So can you give maybe some people who don't know how to start working with the land or
Yeah.
even connecting with the land spirits, can you give them a little advice?
Yeah, I would say so from my background, I grew up in a fairly agnostic household, which was, I grew up in the Midwest
Mhm.
in the, I grew up in the 80s and was a teenager in the 90s. And, it was right smack in the middle of a satanic panic.
Yeah,
So having parents who were um, more or less agnostic was a real blessing that I never realized until much later in life,
yeah,
because I
definitely.
didn't have any of the BS
Mhm.
like from the overculture sort of influencing my worldview. And um, so it allowed me to sort of I feel like most children are born, and I think all children are born animist, and
Absolutely.
it's trained out of us by our culture, by our parents, by
And
everything.
our magic in general, for
Yeah,
sure.
in 100%. So I was able, from a young age, just to like explore the world and experience the world. and my dog is snoring right next to me. So if you hear that, that's what.
My son's dog was just down here and she was like huffing, and I keep waiting for her to like jump up on me. So
uh,
it's fine. It's a family thing. It's okay.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, but all of that to say, I was fortunate enough to really start communicating with land spirits and things like that pretty early, and just experience a dialogue almost between myself and different spirits and different levels of land spirits, whether it be from individual land spirits or the spirit of a type of like tree or whatever. Um, so I would say, I mean, to get back to your question, I would say the best way to begin a relationship with land spirits is to actually go where they are, and that's you can go to a park. I like I do. I go to a nature preserve that's here. Even if you're in the city, though, there are still plenty of opportunities to work with land spirits, and work with the different spirits that inhabit the place where you are. Everything in my worldview, everything is inspirited.
Yeah.
So you can even in the densest city, you can find spirits that exist there. Whether or not they're traditional land spirits in the nature sense, you have a spirit of a building. You have the spirit of the trees that are lining the street. Each one of them have their own spirit. That
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
greet them and work with them, and that's kind of the point. Is you just start working with them. You start working with them by saying hello, by doing the things that maybe culturally we're you know shamed out of thinking that we can do.
Right.
um, every day I talk to the trees that are in my neighborhood,
Hmm.
and I greet them when I go out, when I'm going for a walk or whatever, and and as well as the animals that are around. I sit and
Yeah.
talk with some of the animals that are here. We have a hawk mother and a hawk. I think it's a child, a juvenile,
Yeah.
and they have this like amazing relationship where you know I have a 6-year-old son, and I can just see like juvenile animals, regardless of of what species they are,
Right.
all
Right.
act the same with their parents. He's kind of like
And
hopping
absolutely.
around, hopping over his mom's head, and she's just like, "Stop it," and he's like, "No, mom, wait, I want to."
Yeah. What's
So I've been,
this?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I've been working. I've been like greeting them, and um, but as you develop, these relationships, you can leave offerings, and most of the time for me, that means just leaving a little bit of water, a
Yeah.
little bit of spring water, or whatever water that you have that's accessible to you. Just the,
That's easy
the
to
ge-
do.
yeah, yeah. It's a gesture, and it's an energy offering, and doing that, developing those sorts of energy offerings and energy exchanges is how you begin sort of uh, establishing relationships, and you find out, quickly who wants to work with you, who doesn't, who's standoffish, and who you can like eventually get to thaw and be more friendly with you.
Right.
It's in so many ways, it is like establishing relationships with human beings.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Um, so if you start treating these other than human beings as animate beings,
Mhm.
you begin to experience, the world with them, um, instead of just seeing them as static objects that exist in some sort of like meaningless void.
Right, right. Well, that's like me. I talk to everything. So honestly, and it's usually out loud. So I'm like
Yeah,
going around my house just talking to everything. Like my
yeah,
kids don't even question me anymore. But it's like one of those things sometimes, like it carries on. Like if I'm in the store, I'm like, and I'm like, oh shoot, I probably shouldn't be like talking to myself out loud
Yeah.
like that. But it's just that's what I do, because that's what I believe. There's just a
Yeah.
spirit in everything, and
Yeah.
I think that's such a great thing to do, is just start talking this stuff. Just start
Yeah.
feeling it out, and really, um, you know, and I think too, also it helps with your intuition and building your intuition,
Yeah.
and trusting your intuition, right?
Yeah.
Because that's a big part of it too. Because sometimes things answer back, and you're like,
Right.
a lot of people just dismiss it, like, oh, that's just me. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it's really. But sometimes that
Yeah.
voice, it does come in your own voice, because that's what you're going to listen to, that's what you hear, that's
Yeah.
what you can relate to. So I think
Yeah.
a lot of times people too worry about, like, oh, but that's not what it's not like some disembodied voice in my head.
Well, for
And
me, I think there's a lot of as you're doing this, if you're not in touch with sort of your psychic senses, it's a
Mhm.
good way to help develop those as well and understand how you personally communicate, with spirits, with spirit in general. For me, I don't actually, while I do use verbal communication when I'm speaking, when I'm trying to communicate, most of the time, what I've learned is that my primary ways of interacting and communicating with spirits is by sending and receiving images. So I'll get a flash of something in my mind that is entirely from outside.
Right.
It is, and uh, and that's how I most of my communication happens when
Yeah.
I'm interacting. Like I
Yeah.
said, I do say, hello, good morning. There's, I think I don't know if it made it into the book or not. I can't remember, but um, there's a little green, like, hoverfly or orchard fly, orchard bee, kind of
Mm.
little brilliant, like, green hovering flies that, especially in the late spring, early summer, are around my house, and I adore them. They're just like the most magical little. I mean, like you don't need to imagine like fairies because this is like a real kind of
Right.
real.
So
I mean,
that, yeah,
not
I think
real.
I actually know what you're talking about too.
Yeah, yeah,
I think I've seen them, like people have like on their like ring cameras, like
yeah,
posted videos of them, and
yeah.
they totally look like fairies.
And they are really they're very curious, and they will hang out near you and just like sort of check out, kind of scope out what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I've been trying for a number of years now to actually get one to land on my finger and to
Right.
like
Right.
establish the trust there to let that happen.
Right.
But it's always in progress, and I'm probably working with like the great 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 grand you know children of the original hoverflies that I had started establishing this relationship with.
Yeah. For
Um,
sure. Yeah.
so
Right. At this point, it's like a
yeah,
hundred times removed. At this
right.
point, that's so
So
one
there's
of them eventually. Just when the right one
yeah,
comes
yeah.
along, it'll
I'm just imagining this like folkloric passing on from generation to generation of the hoverflies. Like, this guy's nice, and he wants you to land on his hand, but we still don't trust him that much.
be our friend, but we're not quite sure yet. So
Uh-huh.
I love that. I feel like there's like a whole story in that. Like that would be a really cool like children's book.
Yeah, yeah, right.
It would be
Yeah,
so much fun. I love that. I love it. So I was also looking too, and I actually I have so many. Oh, you know what I did want you to do is for to just kind of explain what animism is.
yeah,
I don't, I feel like a lot of people are hearing that term, especially lately, but they don't know
yeah,
exactly what it is. So can
yeah, yeah. So for me, one of the definitions that I have, in talks or whatever, um, I have kind of a coding background. I don't really do so much computer coding anymore, but I used to do a lot more
you
for my job. And I describe it as essentially the source code of the universe, and meaning that it is just like it's how the universe is constructed, to my mind.
Right.
Everything has sparks of animate, beingness within it, and that goes from the smallest subatomic particles to the largest supernovas beyond, black holes, and all the way up to the universe. The universe, as a witch, I see as the great goddess
Right.
or the star goddess. She is the all that we are part of. We are just subatomic particles to the
Right. Right.
universe.
Just that
Um,
back. We're the little hoverfly of the universe.
right. um, so animism to me is about you know understanding that and incorporating that as a worldview, and I think it's very I'm very much into science, and the material science, materialist sort of viewpoint of science
Hmm.
is fine, but I feel like it's not the whole story.
Right.
And at some point we'll have more of the story, or we won't. Like,
Hmm.
my worldview is okay with there being things that are just unexplainable or don't work in ways that obey laws or whatever. And that's just the way it is. And like I said, I love the sciences, and I'm not anti-science in any way.
Right.
Just to be clear, but my worldview is much more, much larger than what we can capture with the sciences.
Right.
And so having an animist, like, as I said, like when I was a child, I had this sort of animist, mindset growing up. I never knew, I would never have used that term,
Right. Right.
in hindsight, I realized that that's what it was. And so that sort of allowed me to, very easily find that witchcraft was a great vehicle, a great method of enacting and enabling my worldview, if you will. So working with everything as being inspirited, and then developing relationships, and then witchcraft. Part of witchcraft is spell work, and sort of bending the universe to our will in some ways, or convincing it to come just a fraction closer to our will.
Right. 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 Just
And
a
I
little.
Yeah. And I found that having these established relationships with different spirits made it easier. It made it easier to make my magic work, and um, because I was asking beings that I already knew if they would do a favor for me,
Mhm.
essentially. And it when you have an established relationship, it's like, well, yeah, sure. It's like asking a friend for a favor,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know. Like, we already have a rapport. I'm not just coming to you when I need something. I also, like, talk to you and pay attention to you, and we interact outside of my needs,
Yeah. No, and that's an
Um,
important point for
yeah,
sure. It's just
yeah,
the continual work, not just when
yeah,
you do something.
right. And so I mean, I love, I love and hate the tables of correspondences that we have, in all of the spell compendiums, and
Mhm.
I have a couple of Scott Cunningham's books here, and his magical herbalism book or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't remember
Yeah,
the
I
name,
think definitely
but
I had it somewhere over here. I just was looking at something on it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like, I love it, and for the most part, I resonate with the correspondences that different people have created.
Mhm.
Um, but for me, I'm like, well, I don't want to use um, something as an object, because there's a spirit behind that object, and
Right.
if I'm just using it, like, I might get results, and at times when I've waxed and waned with my animist worldview, I have done those spells and just been like, okay, the spell says it needs these things, so check, check, check. One, here's my little grocery list, and out into the universe, and magic. um,
Boom, done. It
so
is, yeah.
yeah, but yeah, so it's you know I get better results when I'm working with um, spirits that I'm familiar with, and spirits that I'm partnered with, and that I make regular offerings to, and that I care
Mhm.
for. I have a number of witchy as well as like just culinary type herbs that I grow in my garden every
Right.
year. And I year after year, even if I never like take a snipping of anything. Um, like I have a thyme plant that I always. Florida's brutal in the summer for any plant, especially plants that
Yeah,
are
I'm sure.
originally from the Mediterranean.
Right,
um,
right.
so it gets really humid, it gets really wet, nothing ever dries, and they get like fungal diseases and die. And that's just the reality. So a lot of times, if I have seeds, if they produced flowers and went to seed, then I'll save those seeds and plant another generation, or I'll just, buy some new seed and plant again. But thyme is
Mhm.
one of the plants that I grow that is for me really closely related to the land spirits here, or fae, if you will.
Yeah.
Um,
No.
so I always have that, as and generally I don't actually consume any of it. Um,
Right.
Time
Yeah,
is
'cause that's like a weird one. It's like for
uh,
certain things, unless you're using it in spell work, it's definitely like,
yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
throwing it in everything.
yeah, yeah, and it's got. I mean, like when it's a fresh, when you harvest thyme fresh, the oils are so strong in it that it can numb your mouth really easily. So
Yeah. Well, just by
when you're
walking
when you're
by it,
incorporating,
it's so strong.
yeah, yeah. So incorporating it into food is like, I don't know. So,
Unless you
but
really like
yeah. So, but I have all of these plants that I continuously develop relationships with, feed the relationships, and when I'm doing spell work, oftentimes I'll go to my garden rather than going to a book of correspondences at this point in my life. And and I ask them, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? What is the uh, whatever need I might have, or whatever thing I'm trying to put into the world, I'll kind of describe it and see if they
Yeah.
have anything that they can help with. And oftentimes, it's not like, oh, like traditional mandrake root might be the best for this particular spell, but there's something in my garden that I can pull from that would work, you know, not as well, but the established relationship means that it works harder to achieve what I am asking it for. And
Right.
and that's kind of where I work now at this point.
Yeah, I love that because I'm very, very much do the same thing. And, there's a lot of times too that certain herbs or plants are like me, like I want
Yeah.
to work, and it might be even one that I wouldn't even have considered. And it was funny that you bring up the time because in my house in Massachusetts, there's so much time, like so
Yeah.
much, and that's why I was like kind of trying to clean out some of the, you know, plants and just kind of clean it up a little bit. And every time I walked past it, it was like, I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, with all this. So we're just going to talk to it, leave it be.
Yeah.
That mugwort,
The
so much of
Oh yeah.
mugwort. Like all, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't really have a lot around here, but there is so much, so much.
Yeah.
It's crazy how
Yeah.
that happens.
Yeah, I need to take a cutting of my mugwort and a cutting of my rue before they completely die
Yeah.
off here. But another interesting story that just came to mind about time is I always find it in Like there are native wild varieties of thyme that you can find. Um,
Mhm.
they might not be native, but they're whatever. They might be introduced, but
Been there for a
um,
while.
they've been around for a long time.
Right.
And so at a particular like junctional point of my training, um, I was going to like in my witchcraft training, I was going to receive, sort of an elevation or something like that.
Right.
And we went to a graveyard. We were near uh, Woodstock, actually, and we were going to the graveyard there, and um, so we were doing, like going to the graveyard, this liminal space, and for me, there's a lot of when you work with the Fae, there can be a lot of like crossover between ancestors and other spirits that sort of all blend in, like sometimes
Yeah.
ancestor spirits start behaving like Fae spirits, or maybe, there's just a even in folklore, there's a little bit of a blend that happens there that it's hard to
Yeah.
like parse out
Yeah.
what is and
Right.
what is not. Um, so I'm walking through this graveyard and we're just walking to different graves and getting impressions and like, greeting the spirits that want to be greeted. And, there's like deer running through. It's a really just a lovely, place.
Yes, I've actually
And
been there before. It is
have
very
you?
pretty
Okay.
there. Mhm.
Yeah. And I'm walking through and I'm like, my nose and my mouth are just like almost as if I'm inhaling like Vicks Vapor Rub or something like
Oh,
that. And
wow.
I'm
Yeah.
like, what is that? Like, and finally I look down and there's all of this wild thyme growing everywhere and like filling the whole cemetery. So as you're walking, you're just releasing more and more and more of the
It all
of the oils into the air, and it was so magical for me. I was floored by it because I have always had that strong association with the herb thyme and fairy, and to be in this place that was, that feels between the worlds. It is, being in a cemetery is a sort of liminal space on its own, and
absolutely.
then to be like greeted by this herb that I work so closely with in so many ways, it was incredible, magical
Yeah, that's
experience for sure.
validation too, like, "All right, I'm where I need to be right now," sort of thing
Yeah,
too, which,
yeah.
and I love too that even that you're mentioning to the cemeteries, and I love how you have that little section in your book about the cemeteries because
Mhm.
I've been noticing some really interesting things lately. Like, I don't know why I do it, but I'll go on TikTok just to torture myself because I will watch a lot of that stuff and I'm like, oh my God, oh wow, what is happening? So
Yeah,
I like that you covered that. I think that's
yeah,
important to cover. I had just watched a TikTok, and this girl had gone to a cemetery, and I think it was in Salem. That's why I
yeah,
stopped to watch it. Took some cemetery dirt, was on
yeah.
TikTok. Oh, look what I got from that, and I'm just like,
Oh my god. Yeah, and in Salem, it is flat out like illegal to do that. Like you
yes,
can
well,
be fined
they
or arrested.
yeah, both. And they
Yeah,
closed. They had to close the one cemetery, and you can only go there on tours now because people keep doing that. And
yeah,
and I really don't think people understand that just because you go there and you're like, "Can I have some of this dirt?" That's not it's just not how it works.
yeah,
So, I think,
yeah,
and like I said, so I love that you touched on that because not a lot of people are talking about that and
yeah.
what kind of the etiquette is.
Right,
So, and it's a wonderful liminal space like you said, and there's so much to receive there and that you don't really need to take anything because you can
right.
already receive it energetically.
Yeah.
Can you just kind of quickly go over just a little bit of cemetery etiquette when you're going through a cemetery, please?
First, yeah, yeah, definitely. So first, I would say, entering a cemetery in itself is a if you're a person who is spiritual or a witch or whatever, entering a cemetery on its face is a magical act. And you should not enter a cemetery unless you have an offering to make to the sort of guardian of the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Generally, most cemeteries I have found have a sort of guardian spirit, if you will, a spirit that looks after everything. And I'm not talking about just the caretaker
Yeah.
of the actual cemetery, but a spirit that does a similar job.
Right.
Um, and for me, when I enter, I always leave an offering to that spirit, as an entry. I'm paying my way in, and I'm asking for your blessing and to allow me to move safely through this space.
Right.
And a lot of times people will use dimes. They'll
Mm-hmm.
leave a dime at the entrance to the cemetery. Um, I have a stack of old Mercury head dimes that I
Oh,
use,
oh, cool.
and I do that mostly because of the folklore connection, and Mercury as being this sort of messenger god between the worlds and between humans and spirit and everything like that. So
Yeah.
um, that's my first act is to just leave that as an offering, and then when you go in, it's like everything that seems common sense that I see people ignoring all the time. Like, don't
Right.
walk over people's graves. Like, don't take anything that is there. You
Right,
just
right.
don't
I know
take
it's
anything.
so silly that, like, we have to actually say these things, but
Yeah,
they do need to be said. They do
yeah,
need to be reminded.
yeah, yeah. It belongs there. It's not. Um, if you want to make like a cemetery dirt, there are plenty of recipes for like an herbal version, like where you grind up different kinds of herbs to create cemetery dirt. You can take that into the cemetery and ask for a blessing. Ask for that to be blessed by the spirits that you encounter there. And and I say this also as somebody who has made all of the mistakes. I've
Right,
I've
right,
gone
yeah.
into the cemetery. I have taken some dirt in the past. I'm not saying like I'm not coming at it from like my high horse or whatever. I'm saying like I've done this kind of stuff, and like in one instance, I ended up having I took some dirt from a judge's grave, and without leaving an offering, and ended up having a really bad medical condition that came almost immediately afterwards, um,
Wow.
and that took me some months to resolve. And was it that spirit? I don't know, but I'm pretty damn sure it was,
Yeah,
because
I would say
I
just to be on the safe side, I would
yeah,
probably not do that again for sure.
right,
And it is.
yeah,
And I think that's, as magical practitioners that have that experience, it's kind of like now our job to be like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do,
yeah,
especially because social media and there's just such an influx, especially
yeah,
after like COVID and everything, and there's
right,
a lot of information out there, and I think
yeah,
it's
for
so
sure,
important to make sure that whoever you are getting your information is someone who has been practicing for a
yeah,
while.
yeah,
I mean, there's plenty
and
of
who's
like,
even made mistakes.
yeah, well, and that's it. That you could even be like, well, I'm thinking about doing this, and we could be like, oh, hey, we did that. I'd
Yeah,
rather you
doesn't
didn't do that.
yeah,
Probably not a
does
good
not end
idea.
well.
Yes, does not end well, does not.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, a
and
lot of times when I enter, when I'm working with different um, spirits that I meet in cemeteries, I'll offer water, and as I do with most of the different spirits that I encounter, it's an energetic exchange that I'm offering, and it's clean for generally speaking. It's not dirtying up the cemetery. So if I were to leave food or something, while that's a great energy offering, it also attracts, animals, and makes, the cemetery a much uh, more unclean, or more, you know, not sacred, place
Yeah,
for the
well, if they're
people, for the
eating the
spirits who
food and
actually
pooping
live
all
there.
over the place, then it's,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
kind of counterproductive at that point.
Yeah, for sure. So,
Yeah.
and I don't, like, there are plenty of animals that do live in cemeteries. And I guess what I'm saying is, like, let them find their own food. Wild
Yes.
animals, that's what they
Exactly, it's
do.
like, don't feed
So,
the ducks, don't feed the
yeah,
wild
right,
cemetery animals, like, it's
right.
just no need. No need to
Yeah,
do that.
yeah,
But there's this one part, and this one paragraph I wanted to read because I
sure.
really loved it, and for somebody, that identifies as a witch too, and, there's a lot of people, I think, now kind of stepping into that, even just the word, and
Yeah,
taking it for a more power standpoint than anything
yeah,
else. And I read this paragraph and I just really thought it was awesome, so I wanted to read it. So, truly becoming a witch means stepping away from that. It comes with responsibility. The most important of which is asking ourselves if we are prepared to commit our lives to this work of spiritual development and rigorous discipline. It is a commitment to ourselves that will require honesty and reflection, a willingness to turn otherness into an ally to work with and through our foibles and demons. And I just absolutely love that because I really
thank you.
think that is something that is it is what that's what it is. Like, in a nutshell, like, that's what it is. It's like you're
Yeah,
walking into this, and you know what? You're gonna have to really start accepting all parts of yourself. And you do go
yeah,
into a little bit of shadow work and all of that. And I think
yeah,
it's just really, again, that integration of it and creating your own magic and what's important to you and what things resonate with you and not anybody else.
yeah, for sure,
So
for
that's
sure.
like really what I got from that paragraph. And I just thought that was such a powerful, and I love that it's just a paragraph and it just really kind of summed it all up. And when I read it, I was
Yeah,
like, yes, this. I did. I loved it.
yeah,
I loved it.
yeah. Yeah,
No.
I think that's the thing that so many people, when we first come into witchcraft, we're so seduced by the magic and the spells, and it's all really cool. Like, of course,
Yeah.
like when I was a teenager, I think The Craft just came out, and
Yeah.
everybody wanted to be a witch after that. Like, everybody.
Oh, everybody.
And
Everybody.
yeah. So, and as you go on, you begin to realize, oh, this is like, most of the work here is healing myself so that I can actually perform these other tasks more
Right.
effectively.
Right. No,
And
absolutely.
it's something that you never realize getting into it. You know, years and years later now, it's just like, well, the healing work is like the primary focus for me.
Yeah.
Healing through traumas, and healing through, ancestral, lineage stuff, and all kinds of things. It's
Right.
it's the work of a lifetime. So
It is, absolutely. And
yeah,
that's an important point too, because even with the shadow work aspect, another, phrase that's been very become very popular. And I've even come across people like, come do my shadow work course. By the time you're done with it, your shadow work will be all cleared. And I'm just like, no, it
that's
will
not how
not.
any of this works.
You're just moving that layer because then the other stuff just starts popping up, you know?
Right. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
never
yeah,
ending. It never ends.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I actually do have somebody here that had a question. So on my
Sure.
Instagram, I got to look at my phone. It says, if
Yep.
you're going to a cemetery to visit your family, not ancestors, but people you knew in life, should you be making dime offerings each time?
Um, personally, I do. Um, if you don't want to do that, then maybe a better way would be to make an offering to whatever establishment is managing or taking care of the like the actual caretakers of
Right,
the
right.
cemetery. You can see if there's a charity associated with them or something like that, and you can just do a one time or once a year offering in that way.
Yeah,
Um,
I love
if it's
that.
something where like on a weekly basis you're going, and in some ways, um, there is also the question of like leaving a coin at the entrance to the cemetery,
Mm.
sort of introduces its own pollution, if you will, like
Right.
the metal from
Yeah,
the
the
coin
actual
leaching
coin.
into the earth and things like that. Um, and is it so much that it's creating a bad situation, a worse situation than having people in sealed coffins interred in the earth? Probably not.
You're
But
right.
it's all
Full of
about the
formaldehyde.
it's all about the intent as well,
Yeah,
and as a witch myself, I want to leave as light of a footprint on things wherever I go as possible,
right.
if I can. Um, but yeah, so I would say, or you can just, as I do with as I've said several times already, just do a water offering.
Yeah,
Enter and give a water offering. A dime, like I said earlier, dimes are sort of appealing to me because there's a folkloric history there
right.
associated with it that I'm tapping into and that feels meaningful for me. But
Mm,
your mileage might vary, and if you figure out a different system of offering, then that's great. And as long as it works for you, and it's having as little impact as possible.
right, right. I know
So
that. I mean, I don't have a lot of family around, but my husband has like his grandmother in the local cemetery. So
yeah,
what we did, we planted just some perennial flowers like on her grave.
yeah,
And so when I go and I water them, but that's also my offering.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I kind of like try to like tie it all in. And again, it's, I mean, if there's a plant like that, I'm
yeah,
usually there. I'm such a plant person. So
yeah.
that,
And
that was
that's a good point too. Some cemeteries are open to you bringing
yeah.
in plants to set
Yeah,
on
not
your
all of
family.
them,
Not
unfortunately,
all.
but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, but I know this one does. So I was so that is kind of how I navigate it because we will leave coins, but after quite a long time, there's been
yeah,
quite a pile of them, going on. So we're
yeah,
like, oh, okay, we probably shouldn't do that no more.
yeah.
So yeah, but we actually are we're right to an hour. I
Okay,
feel like we can keep going, but
yeah,
we'll cut it off an hour here.
okay,
So why don't you go ahead and tell everyone where they can find you on like the
yeah,
interwebs?
yeah. So I am on Instagram at Moonlit Hedge, just like in the title of my book. And you can find all kinds of what I'm up to. I occasionally will post videos from my walks
Mhm.
through the Everglades and things like that. Um, my I own the URL moonlithedge.com as well as nathanmhall.com. Um, and that goes to my website, which is kind of, always sort of being upkept.
Right. I always forget about
Um,
it. It's so bad. Like mine too.
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
oh yeah, my website.
right, yeah, because you're used to interacting with people in these other ways.
You're right.
So I'm on Substack, so I have moonlithedge.substack.com,
Oh,
and
cool.
I try to occasionally put out newsletters there. That's probably either on Instagram or on Substack are probably the two best places.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay,
active
cool.
on Facebook as well, but whatever.
Yeah. Well, just Google you. We'll find you somewhere.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
here, Nathan's book. There we go. Path of the Moonlit Hedge. It is available now. So you can go to your favorite place, go ahead and buy it. And once you buy it, do a big solid for us and review it. That is
yes,
really, really
please,
important for authors. Yes, it
yes,
is so important and it helps the publishers, it helps all of us. It takes 5 minutes.
yeah,
And also, tag Nathan in it, so he can share
yeah,
it. And I'm sure,
yeah. And
he
if you
loves
see
seeing out in the
if you
world.
see it out in the wild, yeah, if you see it at a bookstore, I love when people tag me when they find it in a
Yeah,
bookstore. That's like I'm like, You know,
Yeah, but I think
as
that's
a
so
child, I
awesome.
always wanted to be an author. So,
Right.
being
Yeah.
in bookstores is like, oh my gosh.
It is. No, I mean,
So,
it's
yeah,
amazing. It's absolutely amazing, and you did a
yeah.
beautiful job on this book. I
Thank
like I
you.
said, I love it. And
Thank
it
you so
was really
much.
awesome to talk with you. And
You as
everybody go
well.
ahead and give Nathan a follow. I know he's got a lot of stuff going on, so you don't want to miss it. All right, thanks for hanging out with us today, and you guys have a great
Yeah.
week. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, we are almost